Hello, everyone. It is Friday, May 31st. This is sig-aws. We have a very light agenda today. Please do add items to the agenda if you would like to discuss them. Feel free to put your name on there as well. I put a link in the chat. I will repaste it for anyone that just joined because I don't know if history works. I am your, while you're doing that, I am your moderator, facilitator, Justin Santa Barbara. I work at Google. A reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be put on the internet, and please be mindful of our code of conduct and be a good person and don't say anything mean about eventual consistency, which seems to be the first item on the agenda. And with that, I guess we can go right over to you, Hemant. You added that, right, Hemant?
Yeah, I added it.
Cool.
Okay, so so the problem is that we are seeing like a bunch of test failures, and likely they'll fail in production too, where like we are running describe instance or describe volume, and describe volume we ran, and the describe volume says I'm attached to this node X, and we did not perform any detach. Let's say the volume is attached to node X, then we perform a detach, and then we poll if it is detached, and it says, okay, I'm detached now. So we try and attach it to some other place, and then the describe volume, same describe volume, if you call it again, it now says it is still attached to the node from where we just detached. And similar problem is we have observed in the describe instance code path where we detached from a node, we poll that it is detached, and it says, okay, I'm detached. But then someone else tries to attach, and then that checks again, and it says, oh, this instance still has the volume. So yeah, so that's the problem we are seeing. And I think I don't know if it is recent or what happened, but we haven't seen this kind of issues where like the same API call will tell X and then it will tell Y, and it just, we are thinking we'll have to kind of audit the whole code base actually and see if we are like doing the right things.
That sounds like fun. Now, can I ask a clarifying question? Do we think that this is because we're using two different read methods, or do we think that read methods in general can like sort of use cache data or whatever, and then when we go to do what I would call a write operation, like an attach, that it actually does like a real check? What do we think the like?
Yeah, it's the read operation that is giving us cache data. For instance, in one case, what is happening is like uh, when a volume is, you're trying to attach a volume to a node X, and before we attach, to save the amount of the write, like the mutable API calls we make, we perform a describe volume on the volume to check if volume is available. If volume is not available, we like we see, okay, if it can be detached. So we do a describe volume call, and it says it's still attached to some old instance from where we have already detached. And so it's the read all the read API calls which are returning us cache data and breaking havoc in the code path. So
It does look like we have some comments from people that work at AWS and able to understand the internals better than those of us that don't. I don't know if anyone here wants to comment on it more or give us some insight.
yeah, that'll be great, because AWS, its documentation says that the correct way to handle this is poll it with exponential backoff, but we already do. We just that we don't know when we can rely on the value of like a read API call. It sounds like we have to always do a mutable API call to get the correct value, to get the correct, like, accurate state of a volume or an instance.
Right, which would mean basically that like I guess what we could do is we basically have to be able to recover. We assume that all our reads are bad, and then we just do a sort of optimistic write, and we just have to be able to recover from the idea that our optimistic write may have been bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Or may have been based on out of stale data.
Yeah, and the reconciler in both the attached controller and in the kubelet side is not very well, like written to recover from something like that. In one case, at least, a volume is permanently stuck. Actually, like it will never attach. Like the part will never mount. So,
And we do have CSI coming. I do wonder whether it's just that you're noticing this more, or whether something has changed underneath us. In other words, like if nothing has changed and you're just better observing it, then maybe we should sprint towards CSI and make sure the fix is in CSI, because it feels like a lot of the time we have been constrained by the interface that we have exposed to us, the attach detach controller, and maybe we could make sure that CSI has a more appropriate interface, I guess, or a more powerful interface. I don't know if you have any ideas or what you suggest.
the CSI has same problems that entry driver has, at least right now, because we are just noticing, and CSI driver also is written with the assumption that like the read calls return accurate data. So and CSI itself will not fix the problems that we have, because it still uses a direct touch controller. It's just that those calls are going to external driver now. So
I wonder if we're doing an optimistic in the actual SCSI driver though. Like if we're solving it from that perspective, like trying, if it fails, try again. Because it's not entry. I haven't actually dove into that code.
Sorry, can you repeat that again, Chris?
Yeah, I was saying I wonder if we're actually doing like the optimistic right within the CSI driver though.
Oh, okay.
Doing it in, I haven't looked at it. I know I think we just graduated that to beta, if I recall correctly. Might want to look in there or potentially file an issue.
Yeah, so we have been trying to avoid, like using the write calls, because it's just that the write quotas are so low, and API quotas are so low, and in a big enough cluster, you may run out of that quota pretty fast, and it's the read calls are so cheap. So it's like, I mean, all right.
I'll see if I can get more information internally as well.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a couple of people attached to this already.
Yes, I just wanted to bring this up in sig-aws, see if anybody has better idea. With Cheng, he's been commenting, but yeah, but just...
And this is on the error that we're observing is mostly on detach or mostly on attach? Because we do have evidence on attach, like when we could go and like look at when the volume actually shows up on the node, right? Whereas on detach, I feel like we don't have any evidence after the volume disappears. Like there's a second step, right? So the device disappears and then the volume can still be in a detaching state.
Hey, the problem is more in detach actually rather than attach. So actually it's kind of both. So in the detach case, what's happening is like you detach a volume and you there's two cases. One is that when we detach a volume, the responses of describe volume and describe instance could be inconsistent, and so we detached a volume, and that exclusively uses describe volume. But when we attach the same volume to some other node or same node itself, the bug we have seen is on the same node itself. Then what happens is that attach call makes a describe instance call and checks device mappings, what devices are attached to this node, and at that time the describe instance will return the volume that we just detached in the response, and then we assume that device is already attached, so we don't call a attach because describe instance, and we proceed for the what is that, wait for attach. We poll for, but that never succeeds. Wait for attach never succeeds because we never call attach. So that is one code path.
I wonder if we did a paranoid call to describe volume. I wonder if there's a compounding problem because we're switching APIs. I don't know if Chris, you have any insight on this, but like if we, as well as doing describe instance to like list the mount points, we did describe volume as well on an attach to sort of double check, which I know is sort of like, but it's double check the volume status for that exact problem that Hemant just described. It can't hurt other than quota, but quota is obviously a problem.
Yeah, quota would be my only concern. I don't know what that would do.
Yeah, that's all like, okay. All right. Well, I think if we all have a look at is it one issue or a pair of issues? It looks like a pair of issues.
Yeah, and the second case was the inconsistency in describe volume itself, actually, where what happens is like we detached a volume and we are trying to attach the volume now to some other node. So what happens is that so what happens is we try to attach it, and before we attach it, we actually do a describe volume, and describe volume says volume is not available. So we return an error that this volume cannot be attached. And attach detach controller, when it sees that the volume is like cannot be attached, it raises an error called dangling error, and that adds the volume to actual state of the world. And but in truth, volume is not actually attached to the node because the describe volume just returned stale data. So in that case, what happens is that the volume is reported as attached on the node status, and the kubelet waits for the volume to appear on whatever path that describe volume returned, and the volume never appears there. It just, so the pod is forever blocked actually. So that's the second instance of it where the describe volume itself returns incorrect data. But that one, I mean, we have a fix in, like, I'm thinking of like proposing some fixes in Kubernetes. Part of me feels wrong to kind of, like fix Kubernetes, this thing to work around some of these limitations, like fix some of the core Kubernetes constructs to work around some of these API limitations. But I don't know, I don't have a good answer other than to fix some of the way we handle this in, like, surface is this one level up so that Kubernetes can deal with this correctly.
Yeah, I guess my one hope with CSI is that my understanding is that there's a little bit more opportunity to have objects for volumes. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But we could put a little bit more. I guess we have volumes already if you're assuming you're using PVCs, which I imagine most people are by now. So we could put a little bit of state on that and sort of try to, like, I don't know, like avoid the worst of it. But I also think that we should be more willing to expend quota to save from serious bugs, particularly if the quota is on sort of user-initiated operations, like an attach or a detach, rather than just background polling. Like, background polling is what really kills us. Like adding any more calls there is like really bad, but I feel that adding calls to operations is less bad because it, like, if we get throttled, we just basically, we're not going to continue to, we basically slow down the speed at which we can launch pods or whatever, which is not great, but is not as bad as like just getting stuck and like being unable, just having no quota at all and being, yeah, which is what happens on if you like do an overly aggressive continuous background poll, for example.
Okay. I think we can recover some of the state by doing that. So, okay.
And I think we have a win coming anyway on some calls because of the, I don't know when it was introduced, but there was something about the polling of volumes on an attach, right? Where I think there's a PR, I think you commented on it, Hemant, where it's like, we're going to introduce like exponential backoff polling. And right now it's a pretty aggressive, like, is it every second polling for 30 seconds? So we should get some calls there.
Yeah, but that was a recent change. That was not for attach. That is for like after creating when the volumes become available. That
Oh,
was
is it create? Okay.
yeah. So it will contribute to the API quota, but it's
I thought it was attached. Yeah, I think you're. Yeah, I will.
cool.
All right. Well, thank you for drawing our attention to that.
I have one more related item. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Okay, sorry. So exponential backoff, we are currently like doing whatever we're implementing. Like we just back off by certain amount and we do it. But Amazon EBS, like AWS SDK said there should be a retry after header present in the responses, but that's never present actually. Does Amazon know about it? Can this be fixed?
Is there an issue for this? I'm sorry, Hemant. Or is there a...
There is no issue for it. I'm sorry. I'll log something, but it's just that when we observed when we are trying to fix some of this exponential backoff, we are basically blindly exponentially backing off. We are not backing off. I don't know how the AWS quota internally works. Like let's say we are doing a 2-minute operation. We are 1.2 is our exponential backoff factor. Then we just back off like that. But AWS SDK said you should back off until retry after header. What if we try in between, like a request? Is it still counted against the quota? So I'm just trying to see. It might be best if our exponential backoff or when we throttle the API request, it could use the retry after header. But currently we cannot use retry after header. Like currently we are throttling, right? When we get request limit exceeded error from Amazon. But we are just throttling by our own heuristic. There's no logic. There's not much logic to it. So, but if we could get retry after header from Amazon, then we can, like do more smart throttling so that we know that, okay, this API call is not going to succeed until that. It's probably a bug on Amazon side. I hope someone like in Amazon can fix this or something, that missing retry after header. I'll just try to.
Are you saying that this header exists or should exist?
It should exist. It doesn't exist.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, I am guilty of writing the terrible global retry handler, which is very hand wavy and heuristics, but is designed exactly as you say, because there's basically no other way to know when the limits aren't accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we basically have to just back off, and we do it sort of globally meaning across the process whenever we see a retry, a quota error, I can't remember what it's called, rate limit exceeded. But yeah, if a hint would be great if it was accurate. Yeah, I think a bug would be wonderful. I don't really know if...
Yeah, we can definitely start looking at it from that perspective if there's something.
So yeah, the SDK says, the AWS SDK says there should be a retry after header, but it's not present. So that's the problem.
Okay. Yeah, I would say file an issue. You can drop it in the AWS Slack or channel in Slack. So we can take a look at it and see if we can get more information.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chris and Hemant.
Cool.
We have another item on our agenda from Seth, AWS encryption provider, PR number 16, adding Micah.
That's just a question for you, Justin. We want to add Mika to as an owner of the repo. He's trying to help me, pick up where we left off and get automated tests and some sort of release process going.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
All right, just wanted to make sure it was okay with you.
I have approved it.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks. Sorry about you shouldn't have to do that, so I apologize for that. But thank you for bringing
That's
it
fine.
Cool, and then yeah, that'd be great. And then we have another item on the agenda. Ritesh, is that correct? Multiple pods on the same node. Do you want to talk us through the issue? Ritesh, we can't hear you. Can you hear me? I can So there's an issue linked AWS EBS CSI driver number 295. Chris, it looks like you've CC'd who I presume, Cheng, who I presume is the correct person to look into this.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything in particular we should discuss further on that, Ritesh. Essentially, it's not possible to share the PV backed with the EBS volumes to share between pods on the same node if the pods are deployment objects, whereas it does work with stateful sets. That sounds odd. Okay. Okay, well, I will certainly read this issue. Did someone say something? I'm sorry. I will certainly read this issue. This is surprising because deployments and stateful sets should both end up as pods, and the volume logic shouldn't really change. The volume logic is at the pod level, so it shouldn't really matter whether you're using a deployment or a stateful set, but just because something is surprising does not mean that it is not true. So this is certainly interesting. And yeah, I think, yeah, thank you for raising the issue, and thank you, Chris, for CCing Cheng on that.
I think this should work. There should be no difference between stateful set and deployments.
I'm not surprised it works for stateful sets, but okay. Okay.
Cheng also, real quick, internally, Cheng also confirmed about the above issue about the not having an optimistic write or fixing that issue. CSI will have that. I wasn't sure, so.
Okay. We have reached the end of our agenda. I don't know if anyone else has anything else they would like to bring up, or Ritesh, if you're able to, I don't know, to chime in if there's anything else you want to talk about on your issue, because at least I wasn't able to hear you on there. But otherwise, everyone gets a little bit of time back on their Friday. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay. Wishing everyone a very happy end of May, and see you in 2 weeks.
See ya. Thank you.
Bye.